Tonight on Reporting Scotland, a transgender doctor denies trying to end a nurse's career in a dispute over female changing rooms at a hospital in Fife. Also on tonight's programme, with the prospect of bills rising by up to 10%, experts warn more than half of us are in the wrong council tax bands. Would you be happy to pay more?
I think they're getting enough out of us at the moment.
If you don't pay for services, then you don't get the services. I think the money's obviously been spent somewhere else, not on the stuff that matter.
A Glasgow auction house says it will no longer sell Nazi memorabilia, having defended its decision to do so earlier today. In a bid to crack down on dogfouling and litter, Aberdeen City Council brings in a private company to support wardens.
And I'll be live from Celtic Park for tonight's sport, where there's a huge game in the Champions League. Celtic hosting Bayern Munich.
Hello, I'm Laura Goodwin. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. A transgender doctor has repeatedly denied trying to end the career of a colleague who complained about having to share the female changing room at a hospital in Fife. Dr Beth Upton was being cross-examined at the employment tribunal brought by nurse Sandy Peggy, who was suspended after making the complaint. Louise Cowie reports.
Dr Beth Upton returning for the 8th day of this employment tribunal in Dundee. The timeline of email exchanges between Dr Upton and superiors investigating incidents involving Sandy Peggy was under scrutiny. An encounter between Dr Upton, who is a trans woman, and nurse Peggy in the female changing rooms of Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy on Christmas Eve 2023 prompted the investigation. It was put to Dr Upton that a prior incident in Resus, where the doctor said nurse Peggy potentially compromised patient safety, was far more serious. Nurse Peggy's barrister said, "What I want to suggest to you is that the reason for the delay in sending the email entitled Hate Incident is that you were urgently taking advice from the BMA about one or two things. Those things were the regulatory risk for you in raising such a serious professional complaint for the first time, only months after the incident, and possibly also the regulatory and disciplinary risk for you in making up a potentially career-ending allegation about a colleague that had no substance or foundation." The doctor replied, "No, that's not why it took so long. I'm not in the business of making false allegations about a colleague." Dr Upton complained to NHS Fife about Miss Peggy's behaviour after the last exchange, which the two sides dispute, claiming it was bullying. Miss Peggy was put on leave and then suspended in January 2024. "It was put to Dr Upton that you were punishing Sandy. You were telling a pack of lies to get Sandy dismissed. You've done your very best to end Sandy Peggy's unblemished 30-year career as a nurse as a punishment for defying you." The doctor replied, "I'm not interested in punishment, in retribution, in vengeance. I'm interested in a just and peaceful resolution to what could and should have been a workplace dispute. I'm interested in justice." The tribunal heard previously that a supervisor said the junior doctor should use the female changing room. Miss Peggy claims that being made to share the female changing room with Dr Upton amounts to unlawful harassment under the Equality Act. The hearing continues tomorrow. Louise Cowie, Reporting Scotland, Dundee.
In the coming weeks, councils across Scotland will decide whether to increase our council tax rates as they try to balance the books. Some are considering increases of up to 10%. But according to a financial watchdog, more than half of properties in Scotland aren't even in the correct band. Now, banding was worked out in the 1990s according to property value and hasn't changed since then, even though property values have. So for context, in February 1994, the average price for a house or flat in Scotland was just over £40,000. Now, fast forward 30 years and the average price is just over £183,000. Now, all this has prompted calls for a wider reform of council tax. Here's our political correspondent, Phil Sim.
Councils deliver some of our most vital services, from schools to social care to housing, roads and community facilities. but they are under increasing pressure with rising demand for services, an ageing population and trouble with inflation and pay deals. After decades of frozen or capped increases, councils have a free hand to raise local tax rates this year. Scottish Borders Council has already agreed a draft plan for a 10% rise.
I know people's budgets are stretched, our budgets are stretched, but we're asking people, be patient please, just dig into the purse a little bit more so we can protect libraries, swimming pools, upgrade roads, etc, etc. There's a whole host of things that the council does. We're a 24-hour service from cradle to the grave. We do more than any other form of government. Local government is here for communities.
Similar talks are taking place the length and breadth of Scotland. But are people willing to pay a bit more to protect local services?
Well, I think they're getting enough out of us at the moment. You know, for what we're getting anyway.
We're paying too much. The more we're paying now, the less the council's doing for us.
I actually believe that we should pay more for services. So, I'm actually, if you don't pay for services, then you don't get the services.
Absolutely, yeah. I think if you could see it and there was transparency in how it was being spent, I think people would be willing to, yeah.
There have been calls for serious reform of the system to take place, with experts saying it's badly out of date.
Properties were placed into bands based on their relative values in 1991. That's 34 years ago now. Now, if you were to value properties today and put the same number in each band as there currently are, we reckon about 30% will be in a higher band and 30% will be in a lower band.
The SNP pledged to scrap the council tax when it first entered office in 2007. Almost 20 years on, nothing has changed, but ministers insist they are serious about reform.
We want to take forward council tax reform. We've been working with local authorities on their funding plans for the year ahead, and we've made clear that the investment that we have passed on to local government, over £1 billion extra through the budget that's proposed, it should mean that they are able to minimise any increase in council tax.
Almost every party at Holyrood backs major reform of council tax, but that's been the case for years. If the kind of double-digit increases we're talking about become the new normal, it may make it a political priority for them to actually deliver. Phil Sim, reporting Scotland.
A Scottish auctioneer has said it will no longer include Nazi artefacts in future auctions. Earlier today, McTeers held a sale which included swastika bunting and a Third Reich medal, among other items. In a statement, they say they will now cease inclusion of Nazi items from future sales and will receive no income in fees from today's sale. Suzanne Allen reports.
Third Reich, the paper bunting, we can open this at £50.
Just after 10 o'clock this morning, McTeers in Glasgow began a sale of militaria. The auction contained 11 artefacts of Nazi memorabilia, including swastika bunting, a Third Reich military medal and an SS dagger.
300 and selling.
It's not illegal to sell Nazi relics, but it's been criticised.
It is absolutely disgraceful that these items can be bought by just anybody. It is impossible to overstate the visceral response that most Jewish people will have at the sight of these items. And to put them on general sale is just disgraceful. I mean, there is a place for items such as these, and it's a museum or a Holocaust exhibition where they can be displayed properly, responsibly, and with the proper context.
Silver plates said to have been taken from the dining car of Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Göring's private train were included in the collection. One historian believes it's better these are sold publicly.
If we basically just say, well, all of this shouldn't happen, what is the alternative? The alternative is that people either just throw this material out when they find it because they're kind of too embarrassed, or they sell them through dark channels.
£100, fair warning, hammer's coming down.
McTeers don't just deal with militaria. They auction art, jewellery, coins and whisky. After today, Nazi items will no longer be sold. In a statement, McTeers said, "We fully understand the sensitivity surrounding the sale of these particular historical items and have now taken the decision to cease the inclusion of Nazi and SS artefacts in future auctions. With regard to the items sold in today's militaria sale, McTeers will receive no income in fees." The Nazi artefacts fetched more than £1,600. Suzanne Allen reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Well, Sarah is with me now and you're going to be covering this story tonight at 7.
Yes, Laura, we'll be hearing a bit more from the historian that was included in Suzanne's report there. A little before we came on air, I asked him why it's important that people like him can study artefacts like this, but also all of the complexities that surround it. So a really interesting discussion. We'll also have all of the sport, a big night for Celtic in the Champions League, and a bit of glamour for you too. We might have found Scotland's next rising star, and a spoiler alert, it is of course a dog.
Yes, I wouldn't have expected anything less. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.
Now, Forestry and Land Scotland has confirmed 8 feral pigs spotted on the loose in the Cairngorms National Park have been captured and humanely culled. The animals were spotted in woodlands south of Aviemore on Monday. The Cairngorms National Park Authority said the pigs were relatively domesticated and appear to have been illegally abandoned. Now, litter and dog mess, a familiar problem on many of our streets. But now Aberdeen City Council has decided to bring in extra help to tackle it. Their wardens are receiving support from a private company so they can issue on-the-spot fines as well as fixed penalty notices. Our reporter Louise Hosey has more.
It's a perennial problem and a common gripe, dogs fouling on the streets. Now Aberdeen Council has hired a private firm to bring in a new team of wardens. They can issue on-the-spot fines and fix penalty notices to owners caught breaking the law. Today there were mixed reactions at this city park.
It should have been something that should be handled by the council itself, and we're looking at what, in the next few weeks, we're looking at a 10% council tax rise. You know, these are the kind of things that the council tax should be paying for.
I always find in winter, because it's so dark, and they can just walk away and leave it, and they don't have to bother about cleaning it up. But yeah, it is a problem, it's horrible.
The money's scarce enough as it is without employing private companies.
You think the onus should be on the dog owner?
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
If it's under a hedge, it's, that's like less problem. If it's a bigger dog, it's a bigger mess. It's in the middle of the path, it's a bigger problem. So I suppose it all depends how they implement it.
The wardens will have the power to enforce an £80 fine, which rises to £100 if it isn't paid within a month. The council says the decision to bring in an external company was made after a rise in complaints.
Knowing that additional resource is out there and is available to tackle the problems of irresponsible management of dogs and the dog fouling problem, I hope that will give a very strong message to those who are not picking up that they are at serious risk of getting caught.
The wardens will also target fly tipping and littering. It's hoped they'll act as a further deterrent to owners who don't clean up after their pets. Louise Hosey, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
6 mountain areas in Scotland are monitored from mid-December to mid-April to assess the risk of avalanche. Now, usually by this point in the season there would be at least 100. But the Scottish Avalanche Information Service says a lack of snow has resulted in it having one of its most unusual winters in its almost 40-year history. Chris McLennan has the story.
Avalanches may be a terrifying phenomenon, but they're also a sign of a healthy mountain climate. Experts fear a sharp slide in the number of avalanches this year could be as a direct result of climate change.
I think it's what we're all experiencing. It's climate change has a big part to play. For the first time in my 20 years of being with the Avalanche Service, in mid-January, we actually virtually had no snow. So that obviously is highly unusual.
Usually by now, between 100 and 150 avalanches would have been recorded in the mountains like these across Scotland. But so far, details on just over 20 have been gathered, making this one of the most unusual winters in the past 40 years. Changes have been noted by researchers who keep a close eye on conditions.
The level of snow cover present this year is definitely a concern. The last time I saw so little snow, I think, was the winter of 1997-98. So we're getting on for, 25 to 30 years where I've seen so little snow. And so this is a very unusual event. And it's a concern for me because it's happened, pretty quickly.
There's also those taking to the hills that have noticed a difference.
It's definitely been a lot more fluctuating.
the conditions seem to be quite fickle, so it's either here or it's not, and it's quite sort of, I guess, not consolidated, so you just don't know what you're going into.
Are you concerned at all by it?
Not particularly, no. No concerns whatsoever.
There's kind of less snow, more frozen ground.
Does that concern you at all?
Yes, it does, yeah, because I ski.
Despite a scarcity of snow, people are still being urged to take caution. Chris McLennan, reporting Scotland in the Cairngorms.
Female refugees and asylum seekers in Glasgow are being taught basic DIY skills by tradeswomen in a pioneering project. Many of them have fled war, gender-based violence and human trafficking. They're housed in basic emergency accommodation. The workshops are teaching them to put up shelves and build furniture. Fiona Stocker reports.
Another DIY skill nailed down. But beneath the surface, some unimaginable experiences.
Yeah, so hard and then no easy. I am from Ethiopia. I go to Sudan. From Sudan and Libya. Libya is Italy, and then here. So hard, no easy. Yeah, a lot of people's lives, a lot of people is died.
My name is Sekina from Sudan. Been here, my family's husband, my daughter. My daughter is 7 years. Yeah.
Are you going to teach her how to build things?
Yeah. Yes.
Some of the women that we work with have been sort of travelling through many different countries to get here, through long, difficult journeys. You see a lot of stuff on the news about small boats. We've definitely had women who've experienced of that, and it's, I can tell you, horrific.
Women who've escaped conflict and gender-based violence are often given emergency accommodation. It's basic. But this project will give them skills, meaning they can change that for themselves.
Right now we're learning about different wall fixings in their homes. They might have masonry brick walls, or we've got the plasterboard walls as well.
Samira is now using what she's learned to teach others here. And the women's confidence keeps building.
Normally this kind of work is for men, is assumed is for men. And when we wanted to do in our house, we needed to request a help for a man. This time we are learning how to do this, and we will do ourselves in our house and support other women how to do it. And we will live in a beautiful house.
The only sound that drowns out the noise of the power tools here is laughter. Fiona Stocker, reporting Scotland.
All right, let's get to night sport with Lewis, who's live at Celtic Park for us tonight. Big night.
It certainly is. Thanks, Laura. I'm here at Celtic Park, where there is a buzz starting to build, because it isn't long now until Celtic take on Bayern Munich in the first of two games, with the prize at the end of this being a place in the last 16 of the Champions League. But what a huge task it is. Bayern Munich undoubtedly one of the best teams in Europe right now. They've won this competition 6 times, but there are some similarities between the two sides as well. Both sets of supporters know how to create an atmosphere. The Bayern Munich fans have already been singing at the start here, and I can bring you some team news as well to get you right up to speed. Those are just out, and the front three for Brendan Rodgers tonight consists of Nicholas Kuhn, Adam Ida and Daisen Maeda. More of that on the BBC Sport website, but here are the thoughts of the two managers ahead of kick-off.
It's not just a tick box exercise for players to come and say they've played at Celtic Park. You want them to hurt in this arena as well, and you want them to find the challenges of that combination between the supporters and the players on the pitch, making it a really, really, really difficult night. And we've started to do that, and obviously this will be a massive test of that. But that's what we sign up for.
In my time throughout my career, I can't remember Celtic losing at home in Europe. So it is a fortress. Why and how, and I think these things play out on the night, we'll see. But in the end, we give it the respect it deserves. But that's also, we also have a team who's geared to look forward to big games.
Well, the fans, as I mentioned, are already starting to filter their way in for the travelling sport. That is a little bit quiet for the home sport at the moment, but earlier today we went out and about to gauge the mood among the fans.
We hope Bayern Munich will win, but I hope we will see a goal from Celtic too, to see the atmosphere in the stadium, because it should be the best in Europe.
It's a grand old team to play for.
We're better at home than away, but even recently we've been not too bad away and not too good at home, so I'd hope to have a 1-0 lead.
Our defense is a problem for us, so speed is important if you play against Bayern. Bayern is probably going to have a lot of possession, so you have to have the speed.
It's a bit of a long shot. We'll put in a few tackles, we'll make a few good passes, and hopefully Jota will score the winner.
They have some good players, especially in the front. They have a player who played for Bayern as well, Nicholas Kuhn. Yeah, so they have some fast players in the front, which will be tough, but I'm confident we're going to win, no matter who's playing.
As they say in German, kein Wand ist unbewingbar, right? No wall is unclimbable, so we can do it.
Well, I'm not going to attempt any of my own German, but we are going to look ahead to this game in a bit more detail with our sports news correspondent Chris McLaughlin. Chris, we've heard all about this atmosphere. We know what's going to be like in here, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, so much is made of the atmosphere inside this place, Lewis, on European nights, and I've been lucky enough to cover many Champions League nights here, and it does live up to the hype. The one thing that I have noticed is that when the really big boys come to town, the likes of Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, the Celtic fans always seem to find something extra. There will be such a din inside this place at 8 o'clock. The Bayern Munich will not be intimidated by it, but the Celtic players will be hoping to thrive on it.
Celtic given a boost, of course, with Daiza Maeda's ban being overturned. Do they stand a chance against a team like Bayern, who boast such good players themselves like Harry Kane?
I think the important thing is that Brendan Rodgers believes they do. He will say to his players and make them believe that they do. They will look at Bayern Munich's record away from home in Europe this season, which isn't particularly great, 1 win in 7. So look, Celtic believe as a club that they belong at this level. Domestically they have swept aside pretty much all before them for the best part of 15 years. So for them to prove that they really do belong at this level on the European stage, they have to beat sides like Bayern Munich. So do they stand a chance? Look, they do. It's a very tough task though.
It certainly is, Chris, indeed. Well, it's going to be a huge task, as Chris says, and you can follow it all on the BBC Sport website. There'll be live text there. There's also live radio commentary on Sportsound, and of course, highlights of this one on BBC One right here at 20 to 11 on Match of the Day. So it's all building up to be a really entertaining encounter. Let's see how Celtic can fare. Back to you in the studio, Laura.
OK, Lewis, many thanks indeed. It's shaping up to be a very exciting night. So it's Wednesday night, it is debate night. Here's Stephen Jardine to tell us more.
Debate night is in Aberdeen this evening, Scotland's energy capital. We're just waiting for the audience to arrive. They will put their questions this evening to Kirsty Blackman from the SNP, Michael Shanks from Scottish Labour, Edward Mountain from the Scottish Conservatives, the co-leader of the Scottish Greens, Lorna Slater, and political commentator Jeff Aberdeen. That's debate night with me. New time, 9 o'clock on the BBC Scotland channel.
Right, time now for the weather forecast with Judith. Looks like it was a nice day in Shetland.
I know. Well, Shetland really have been leading the way with sunshine stakes this week. Some glorious sunshine with a dry air coming off Norway. It's been barely a cloud in the sky over the last couple of days.
Fancy it? We could go, Judith.
Yes. I love Shetland. I've been there once and I want to return. BBC bosses, if you can meet me, take me up there maybe for a little OB and we'll do a whole week of programmes and weather from up there. Yes, indeed, I'd love to go back. A very good evening to you. Rather grey skies over the Bass Rock there, but indicative of what many of us have seen this week. There's been a bit of a weather standoff now. Let me explain what I mean by that, because we've had this expansive area of high pressure over to the north of us, to the east of us. It's cast iron at the moment, really influencing things, challenging any Atlantic weather fronts that have been coming our way, keeping them away from our shores. And we have deeply cold air entrenched in that high pressure as well, which is why we see the cold air and the cloud coming in on easterly winds. One of those fronts tried tries to make inroad with some milder air entrenched in it during the week in the next couple of days, but it doesn't really get very far. In fact, it just dies away. It's just a brief and glancing blow. Tonight it's dry. The clearest skies across western Scotland. We'll see thicker cloud in the east, maybe the odd spot of rain or drizzle here and there. A widespread frost tonight. Temperatures down to around freezing for most of us, but as low as -4 or 5 through parts of the northwest, and winds will be mainly light as well. Into tomorrow, a lot of dry weather. Now, the best of the morning sunshine found across western Scotland, cold with a frost here. A frost actually under the cloud as well. There'll be cloudier skies in the east generally tomorrow. Across the Northern Isles, now a wee bit more of northeast in the flow tomorrow. We will see more in the way of cloud coming down, maybe the odd shower entrenched in that flow as well, and for Orkney too. I think for Caithness as well. But the cloud across eastern Scotland tomorrow, it won't be quite as leaden. There'll be some breaks and it'll be higher clouds, so we should see some brighter interludes. But that cloud filtering through the central lowlands towards the Glasgow area. Sunny spells for Galloway, for western parts of Argyll, up and towards the West Highlands, the northwest, Skye and the Western Isles faring very well indeed once again tomorrow as well. Still on the cold side though, and into tomorrow evening it's cold and it's frosty for the west and north. Still that cloud in the east with the odd spot of rain. Now here's one of those weak weather fronts starting to push into the southwest. Ahead of it, a freshening wind as well. That makes inroads into southwest Scotland, just bringing some spits and spots of rain and high ground sleet and snow. Further north and east, drier with some brightness. That's your forecast.
Not too bad. I mean, look, if the sun shines, it makes a big difference.
It does, doesn't it? At least it's been dry. Let's thank the
Like
our lucky stars.
Anywhere else you want to go before we leave?
Well, I wouldn't mind Orkney as well, if that's all right.
There we go. The request is in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll be here with your late news at around 10:30 tonight. But until then, from everyone on the team, thank you for being with us and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.